Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Friday night Q&A hangout, and welcome to Art Prof, a global community of artists. So get your questions into the chat to pick our brains and also tell us what are some of your projects that you're working on, any fun new art supplies, because Kat, check this out. I have this new arsenal of burning supplies.
Cool. That's really nice. So this is for everyone else who's viewing right now, but Clara literally sent a picture of that to me in just the receipt. Like she had just bought them. And I said, Clara, I literally got a huge set of wood burning supplies yesterday. And now you're sending me the receipt that you bought them. Are you sure you don't want me to mail these? And she was like, no, too many supplies.
Well, I ended up not using the pyrography kit because it wasn't exactly what I wanted to use because the candles were a lot better. Did you see my new zombie? I just worked on him during Open Studios.
Yeah. Oh, did you work on it some more? This is a little different from last time I saw it.
I did because I discovered that what works well is to take away too much on purpose and then go back in and burn more and then go back in and remove. So it's sort of this like back and forth where you remove, you burn, remove. And I really like all the different types of gradients that happen. Isn't that cool?
Yeah, that is cool. Honestly, this is kind of strange to say, but it feels like a digital brush at 50%
Really?
opacity. Yeah,
That's
depending
so
on certain
weird.
Procreate brushes. But what's great about this traditional media is that you get all sorts of mark making at once, whereas in Procreate or even Photoshop, you'd have to manually switch the brush every time, which is like less convenient.
So anyway, that's what I'm up to. By the way, everybody, you know what happened to Kat? Because you guys all know Kat has a cat named Mia. And what happened this week?
Mia was forced to become a big sister.
Yay, Jessie!
To Jesse. Actually, these photos, so Jesse, this is a picture I just took of him. He kind of looks like an old man, but that's what I love about him. That picture of Mia is her reaction first seeing Jesse for the ever. And you can tell that she's pretty distraught. She's in her memory, she's never really met another cat before. So this will be a long introduction.
So anyway, that's what's happening pet-wise at Kat's house. And Kat, you told me that you've been doing some inking and you had a realization about something?
Yeah, I am back home, so that means I'm back on the grind with working on nostalgia. So this is a page that I was inking earlier, but basically, for those of you who didn't know, I was traveling for a lot of summer. In June, I was in Japan. In July, I was teaching summer programs. And then in August, I was in France. So during those 3 months, I almost very, very few times worked on nostalgia. I had to ask my agent to ask my editor for an extension on my deadline.
It's a lot.
Which I got. I did get the extension. But so I had this page that was just lying out, just exposed. And it was lying there for 3 months. I didn't put it in a stack. I didn't protect it in any way. I thought it was just a piece of paper. If I wanted to start inking it, it was a pencil sketch. I could just maybe dust off the dust and continue to ink. But it's really hard to see online. But ever so slightly, every time I drew something or I inked something, the ink would like spiderweb out. Like, so I would draw a line and then there would be like these little tendrils that come out because I think the ink attached to microscopic pieces of dust.
Wait, what?
Something. Yeah. Or it's either that, because it really was dusty, either that or the paper itself degraded. And I don't know which one it is, but it's really hard to tell here. But in person, you can see the little spider webby things. And I hate that. I'm actually going to just restart this page altogether because I don't like that line quality.
I mean, I don't see it.
Well, that's because it's on the camera. Like if you were in person, you would definitely see it.
Well, maybe the lesson is you shouldn't take 3 months away to travel.
Clara.
No, I'm always the type of person who says if you have any opportunity to travel, just drop everything and go. Don't hesitate, because I just think it's one of the most enriching experiences you can have. And you and I have the same travel lust.
Yeah, we make good travel buddies.
We do. So Blue Wren says, I think when the sizing goes off, it can cause feathering. Is that because the paper's old?
What is the sizing going off?
So the sizing, I think somebody can correct me. It's what's in the paper. It's like glue, like rabbit skin glue.
Oh, I see. Maybe. I think it might be actually a paper thing.
Well, so 7A says might be moisture causing the fibers to lift ever so slightly, making it spidery. Weird, though. We need like a forensic investigation, Kat.
Maybe I need to look at it with a microscope or something, because I thought at first it was the dust, but then I tried like really wiping it clean. I think it might be what everyone else is suggesting. I think the paper degraded somehow.
Well, so Katz says, wait, paper expires. It depends on the type of paper. I mean, there's some paper that's not archival, in which case newsprint, for example, will yellow over time. But what kind of paper are you using?
Bristol.
So Blue Run says gelatin sizing in the paper can go bad. Apparently has never happened to me. Oh, good comparison, Blue Wolf. Sizing, think of it as starch on a shirt. Okay, good. I wasn't totally wrong, 7A. Sizing is what binds the paper. Yes, it's used in watercolor paper. Well, I think the lesson here is you got to get to work. So how do you do that? Because I think a lot of us will take breaks because life happens and we have to go to New York City to see Aaron Tveit and Moulin Rouge in 2 weeks. So what do you do when you're trying to get back into things?
I just try to set aside time to just work, because when you have the amount of drawing that I have to do, a lot of it is simply busy work. You can't feel inspired to do it when it's 250 pages of drawings with multiple little drawings inside. You just have to think of it almost like exercise. You have to do it, you have to get it through, and you will have peaks where you feel very inspired, where you're getting into it, and the craft of the drawing really comes through, but that can't happen every single time.
Do you feel like because of the quantity of pages that a lot of it inevitably has to feel somewhat like grunt work?
Oh, for sure. Art is work. Art can be fun, art can be transcendent, but mostly art is work.
But I've never done a project with that many images because I've been a fine artist most of my life. So it's sort of like, okay, you tackle one piece at a time, you spend some time on it. But how many pages again?
About 250.
That's so much. And I've seen your pages in person and how intricate they are. And the dip pen is not something you can rush. So is it just put on a podcast and just push through?
Yeah, pretty much. And I think the key thing is consistency. Every day you need to work on it just a little bit, because if you just draw 1 hour every single day, by the end of the year is 365 hours of work, right? But the key is that you have to do a little bit of it every day, or a lot of it on certain days. But I've not been very good at that since I took off for 3 months. So it is a struggle to get back into it, but I'm now just need to dedicate a few hours every day to it. What about yourself, Clara? I think that a big series I last saw you do was the Waiting series. I felt like that was the most amount of work with one theme that I saw, but am I right in thinking that?
Well, so Waiting was before I did Falling. Falling is the biggest project because it took me 4 years and it had multiple bodies of work. But honestly, I haven't had a project like that for a really long time because, I mean, I blame it on Art Prof because I'm constantly going places, I'm learning new things, I'm making new content. And so it doesn't actually make sense workflow wise for me to do such a big focused, intensive project anymore because I'm jumping around so many places. But one thing I was thinking this week, you guys, is I do want to make a bread fairy book someday. That's my dream project, like a beautiful coffee table book. But as we know, that's like hours and hours of research and networking to actually get myself there. But I was thinking, what if I just self-published a little bread fairy book that had 5 cookie recipes, and it's just a little something that I could just put out there? I think that might be kind of fun, like a mini bread fairy book.
That'd be great. I think that someone wonderful to talk to about this would be Mia Rozier, because
Mia knows everything.
yeah, Mia knows everything, first of all. But second of all, I feel like that's the start of a big project. It's sort of luck, but you have to make yourself luckier by putting yourself out there, making little things, showing you can do it, proving it. And actually, Julie Ben Bassett was someone else who did that one time. She made a zine called Merms of May.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, in the month of May, every single day, I don't know, Julie Ben Bassett would create a reverse mermaid. So instead of like your typical mermaid, she would make the head, the body, a fish, and the legs, human legs. So they became really derpy creatures. And she actually published.
So cute.
They were cute, but it's sort of this weird, grotesque cute, which Julie is so good at.
She's so good at. Yeah.
But she self-printed her own zines. She put them out in some kind of fair, and somebody from Cartoon Network actually saw it, and they hired her to do the covers for Adventure Time comics.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. I guess it's just about putting yourself out there. Anna is asking, what is the first step making a graphic novel? Do you do drawings by hand or digitally?
Ooh. Oh, Anna Weeder, who has been on Art Prof as a guest several times. I actually use your artwork in slideshow presentations because I think your paintings are so textural and lovely and wonderful. Anyways, I actually start by, in my sketchbook, I either write something or I draw something. For me, the very first step in making a graphic novel and the very first step of making a story generally is that I have to find the one thing in that story I'm obsessed with, my hook. And once I have that hook, I kind of have to build the story around it for me to be able to tell that pivotal point. So for instance, I made a comic called Mama Bruja. It's not a graphic novel, but it is a full comic, full book, mini book. And I was just obsessed with this image of a swimming pool. And if you read that story now, you realize how important that swimming pool is. It actually begins the book and it ends the book too. But I had this vision of the swimming pool and I needed to just put it in a story. So I built the story around this vision of the swimming pool. For nostalgia, my hook is the end. And I can't tell you the end. I guess I just have to make the book so I can produce that end.
And by the way, this is a page from Nostalgia. All right. We also have some great comments. For example, Ginger Cell says, I really want to make a little zine for my reso printing class, but I don't know what to do. What do you think is a good way to do that? Because that's something that people will say to me all the time. People will come into the Discord server and they'll say, well, I want to draw something. I have no idea what to draw. So just in the moment, what do you do with that?
Making a little zine. I mean, if it were me, I would start making observational drawings around me, and then I guess the flow will just come to me afterwards. I'm just describing my process for nostalgia. Making observational drawings of antiques and then eventually compiling that into a book. But I think also you can just think about what you're naturally drawn to. Some people are, Ginger Cell, you have a walrus in your profile picture. Maybe you know a lot about walruses. I would love to read a little zine about walruses.
Oh, he's so
I actually recently saw a zine. I can't remember the name of anything, but I can so vividly see the images. It was a zine about a certain kind of bug. And this bug would just get eaten by frogs, but because of its hard shell or something, it was able to survive the digestive tract of the frog and just get pooped out at the end, still alive. And it was just a zine about this bug that gets eaten and pooped out and it's still alive and it's a real bug.
All right. We also have a question now for a completely change of pace for discussion. Brian is asking, is there a lot of racism in the art community? I mean, racism's everywhere. It doesn't matter what field or place you're in. And it's problematic and it happens in very obvious ways. Sometimes it's more subtle. And I think it's something to be aware of. I had a big problem with people just only hiring white males forever and ever when I was in academia. And now all of a sudden, after 16 years in academia, now people want to hire women of color. And I'm like, dude, I was like 2 decades too late. And so that really frustrated me because I talked to somebody who said to me at an academic conference, they said, well, you don't always know who's a person of color based on their resume. Sometimes we just can't tell. It's like, really? That's your excuse for having white male candidates across the board? It just was so flimsy. And you know something, a lot of people would never hear that unless you talk to a person on the search committee. You don't get to see that process when you are on the other side of the fence. What's your take, Kat?
I completely agree with you in that racism is prevalent everywhere. It's not exclusive to the art community. It's everywhere. Jordan McCracken Foster actually told an interesting story, and I guess I'll just recount it. But basically, his teacher wanted to demonstrate how you could paint different skin tones, and he said, remember that African American people have a bright palm. And then he asked Jordan McCracken Foster to demonstrate it to the whole class. Did he tell you the story?
No, he didn't tell me. He told me a different story.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Well, yeah, there are plenty of stories out there.
Oh my gosh. No, the story he told me, and it's our video about racism in the art world, is that he did a self-portrait where I guess somehow he was showing the inside of his hand and it was light. And the teacher says, why did you make the hand so light? So Jordan went like this, was like, that's what it looks like.
It? Oh my gosh. That could have actually been the same story. I might have changed maybe it up in my mind.
Version. But anyway, the whole point is that it happens in so many places. And honestly, I think the most important thing that we do as artists is that we really inform ourselves about other people's experiences. I mean, I can tell you guys there's a reason the Art Prof staff is not 5 other white male artists. We're here because we all contribute a very different voice. And I think that's really important. Kara Sue says, do you have any advice about getting art school homework done when you don't feel like it?
If I were in your shoes, Kara Sue, I would just complete the requirements, because at this point it is an assignment and I would do it simply for the credit. And I can't force myself to feel inspired or deeply attached to anything. However, I would try my best to do it my way. So if there were a set of requirements, I would try to say, how can I think outside the box and then stuff it back in the box? Or how can I think around this? How can I do everything that's required and still show that it's my homework or my thing? That's the approach I would take it. But if it's such a humdrum assignment and you really don't want to do it and you've tried everything that you can, I would just do the requirements.
Also, you don't have to do amazing work on every project. In fact, I think that's pretty much impossible because you just start getting so many assignments every week. And so what I started doing so I could retain my sanity is I'd say, okay, I got these 5 assignments. And I would honestly make conscious decisions that I'm not going to work as hard on this one because I'm really excited about this one. I'm going to spend more of my time. Obviously, I'm going to do the bare minimum so I don't fail the class. But it's okay to do that. I mean, we can't always be an A plus across the board in every single project. We also have Nancy, good advice. Doing things scared is the best way to start. And there is the sign I came across I love, slow gets you there faster. Mm-hmm. I think for me, if I'm a little bit nervous about doing something, probably means I should do it. I mean, I felt that way about Art Prof. I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I don't know how to edit. I don't know how to do any of these things. And I was like, I guess I'll figure it out along the way, which honestly is most projects. I mean, the number of skills I had to gain outside of art school is like 90% of what I do now.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I'm actually in this phase where I'm trying for a bunch of things and thinking about trying for other things just to apply to residencies, apply to grants, applying to opportunities out there. And I think last year I was apprehensive about the thought of rejection, especially if it was something I really pinned my hopes or pinned my expectations on. I didn't want to be let down. But I think this year I've had a mindset shift where I thought I should just try, and failing a bunch of times will just let me get used to that. But there's also just the slim chance that it would succeed.
Well, I sent out over 100 emails yesterday to art directors. And so far, I've gotten 5 replies. And one of them was, we're not hiring anybody right now. I'm like, okay, sure. I mean, I sent out my last December, and honestly, I shouldn't have waited this long. I've just been a little busy doing other things. But my feeling is that if you don't put that stuff out there, nothing's changed. You're not giving yourself that opportunity. And I get it, because I emailed somebody 2 weeks ago, and I don't know why it was so hard for me to email them, because it was the type of person who was like, they're not going to reply. There's no chance this person's high profile enough. And then they replied, and I was like, oh my God, I'm so happy I sent that email. We have a question from Oh No Typos. Do you have any advice for social media as an ADHD artist? All the advice I hear is stick to one thing. That is so painful to me. When I've tried, my work and page suffered.
I think that's really difficult to answer, given that I am not the specific person with the specific experience, so I can't speak on that behalf. But I am wondering, maybe it's worth trying to post different kinds of formats of things, and it doesn't have to feel, quote, professional, unquote. It can just be somewhere where you offload things. So it can be as simple as taking a picture of a amazing poodle that you saw with a cool haircut to a fully fleshed out Instagram short or reel, post it onto your social media. And over time, I think you will find what will work for you. I don't think sticking to one thing is necessarily what you have to do. You should try all sorts of things, and only by doing that will you find the right way for you.
I mean, if you guys look at my Instagram, it's like horror zombie illustration, Bread Fairy, Mulan Rouge. Like, I am not sticking to one thing. And honestly, all that advice that you hear out there for social media, a lot of it is terrible, because our account goes against everything that you're supposed to be doing on YouTube, because the whole emphasis of YouTube is, okay, we have this one artist, they draw birds in colored pencil in this one style, and that is supposed to succeed. It's like, I posted something about carborundum collagraphs the same day that I posted something about burning drawing. I mean, just do whatever you want to do. Honestly, just don't do the thing that is not you, because the whole thing that I hear about social media, and I think it's kind of annoying advice, where people say, you got to be yourself, you got to be genuine. And it's surprising how hard it is to be genuine. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, I get that. I think there's a big fear of putting yourself, or like your true self, out there. To be perceived is no small task. It's quite daunting. But I think you just have to try somewhere, somehow. So you can just try anything and you don't have to stick to one thing.
And also, you mentioned here, when I've tried, my working page suffered. Don't worry about that. You guys, we spent years making videos that nobody watched because they were terrible. And so you just have to keep going and don't worry about little dips here and there, because I have a very unhealthy obsession with our YouTube analytics. And if I got emotionally invested in, oh, we got a giant spike one week, oh my God, it crashed. Like I would absolutely explode from stress. So it's important to measure your progress so consistently. Like if you start looking at it in terms of days, that's a really easy way to get yourself very frustrated. So Brittany is asking, how do you focus on doing school assignments in art school if you are having problems with processing the fast auditory lectures in art history classes that is caused by disabilities you have, and they aren't accommodating you with written instructions provided by the professors, for example?
I would definitely communicate with the professor as the first step, because the professor cannot immediately sense who's having trouble right off the bat because they can't read your mind. I think that the first step to take is, if this is truly a problem and a demonstrated problem, then talking to the professor and finding a way forward for you to best absorb that information. And if that professor sees or is able to see that you're trying, they would be able to try with you to find a way forward. If that professor is blind to the fact that you're trying and is not willing to cooperate or communicate, that is just not a good teacher.
So Ginger Cell here is suggesting go to the disability office. I don't know what school you're at, but most schools will have something like that that addresses concerns like that. And I would also say, don't just go to the professor, because honestly, some professors listen more than others. And so sometimes if you go to, say, the dean of students and you say, this is something that is an issue for me, sometimes if you get somebody like that involved who will step in, sometimes that's helpful. It depends on the school, but I just would say that's another thing you can do if whatever you talk to the professors, because they are required to do that. I had a student once in my class at RISD who needed everybody to wear a microphone so that way they could hear properly in class. And so we had this microphone that we passed around the class and everything. So it is not okay for them to not accommodate you. Yeah, so Hannah says, student services, disability office can also be very helpful. Sometimes you might have to have a doctor's note. Yeah, the whole thing about accommodations, and I know this is tricky because it comes down to everybody's individual situation, but oftentimes it's not clear who to go to as a student. And I think that's what's really confusing. So if you don't know who to go to, speak to somebody in the office. I mean, like, I had this wonderful guy, he's such a sweet person. He worked in the foundation studies office and he helped students with so many things that were not part of his job. And so sometimes you just have to find like an ally on campus who can help you find the help you need. All right, let's get this question from Joseph, who says, is it a good idea to use tubing to ship large paintings? Can you follow up, Joseph, and tell us what type of paint media you're talking about? Because it's a very different story if we're talking about oils versus acrylic paintings. But I can tell you that it's never really a good idea for oils. But if you do decide to do that with oils, you want to make sure the painting image is on the outside of the tubing. So that way the cracking doesn't go the other way. I don't know how to explain it, but that's what I've always been told. I don't know.
If you stretch it this way, if it lies flat, it can go back like this. But if wrinkle it this way, then you'll have a harder time flattening and evening that out. So stretching is better than crumpling.
That's it. Listen to Kat. She knows about this than I. We also have lots of great suggestions from people about disclosure, student services. And so definitely everybody go through the chat because we aren't able to pull up every single thing. But I think the important thing to know as a student, you have more support than you think you do. Because so often with my own kids, they'll say, oh, I'm having this problem. I'm like, oh, okay, let's email the teacher. No, don't email that. And I'm like, listen, if we did it, it would really help them help you better. And so I think that is a very natural impulse that students really don't want to ask for help. Have you found that? I mean, you're teaching at RISD right now.
Yeah, I mean, there is, I guess, a stigma around it as well. Nobody wants to be seen as the helpless / weak one, when really that isn't the case when you ask for help. When you ask for help, you're advocating for yourself, and it should be seen as an empowering act to be able to do that. But again, it's really hard to break that perception, but it starts with yourself. The way you can help yourself is by advocating for yourself.
I can also tell you that I know we're talking specifically about disabilities earlier, but it goes for anything. I mean, I had so many students, what I would always say to them, I'd explain about the disabilities and how they could go about doing that. But then I would also say to students, listen, if you're just really nervous about this drawing class, if you're stressed about this, or maybe you had a bad experience last semester with drawing and you feel really behind, I want to know that. And I know it's not always easy to say that to your professor, but the more your professor knows about you, the better equipped they are to help you. Because I've had students who, for some reason or another, I didn't know something really important about them. And I felt terrible when I found out, when the student finally told, I was like, oh my gosh, like I've been totally reading you wrong the whole time through. And so I just think as much as you can communicate, as much as you're comfortable, obviously don't do anything you're not comfortable with. But I can tell you as a teacher, I always want students to tell me more. I don't think it's ever been the opposite. I mean, I want to know about your love life, but
Tell enough that's appropriate.
exactly. Yeah. By the way, everybody, if you're not in our Discord, you should definitely join because it's really fun in there. And Kat, you haven't been in there for a little while. We miss you.
Well, I was traveling for the last 3 months.
Yeah. Excuses.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I'm very happy this week, Kat, because I finally started making work again. Like, I'm not kidding. I think I went 6 months without making any work. I mean, at least it felt that way. It's
That's
like,
fine. I mean, you've started up again, and you started with such a cool medium. How would you call it? The candle burning, the smoke medium. I love that for you. I think that's such a great medium. I'm really excited to see more from you.
well, so look at this. This was one of the first ones I did. And I tried to put charcoal on it, and it just looks really bad. Like the charcoal's so blunt and you lose all the color. And then, oh my God, you guys, I didn't want to show you, but I put in a reel the other day. Look at how terrible this is. Oh my God. It's so bad. But this is where I figured out that the charcoal thing wasn't going to work. And then I did better work later on. I mean, I'm a firm believer that if you don't want to make work, I mean, unless you have a professional deadline, just don't do it. Like, I just don't think it's worth the stress of making yourself work when you're really tired or you have something else going on. I just think there's too much guilt regarding that. Do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky balance. I think that you should definitely not overexert yourself. If you find yourself in a really, really, really stressed out place, that's clearly the sign that you need to just step away and take a break. That's part of your growth. It's like after you exercise a while, you need rest days to be able to recuperate, for your muscles to build, to heal, so that you can do the next run better. But also, you need to have a certain level of discipline as well. So, really, a lot of art making is just pushing yourself and then reflecting upon yourself as well, so that you know how much to push yourself and when you need to take those rest days.
I mean, I feel like I'm battling that pretty much every single day. I'm like, well, do I let myself watch Walking Dead clips for a half an hour because I busted my butt this morning working on all of that administrative stuff, which exhausts me like crazy. And then I'm like, I'm just going to watch 5 minutes. And I'm like, 30 minutes later, I'm like, oh man, I got to get back to work. So it's like really, really
30
difficult.
minutes. Some people go for like hours, Clara. I think that's very disciplined of you already.
No, but I'm always like 5 minutes. Like I look at the clock, I'm like, 2:10. Okay, 2:15, you're going to stop watching. It's just like really difficult to do that.
Never works out that way.
So we do have a question from Anna. Can you remind me what time the open studio sessions are? Keep forgetting the times. Right, the clock is going to be changing. Yeah, so Open Studios Club, if you don't know what it is, it's a super casual voice hangout. And it's awesome because you don't have to schedule anything. Like you just show up. So it's always Mondays from 12 to 2 p.m. Eastern and Thursdays 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern. And remember, everybody, all Discord members get one free session. It's really fun. And I mean, all the work that I've been doing, this zombie drawing, I spent 2 Open Studios Club sessions on it. And honestly, if I wasn't running that session, I don't think I would have made that drawing. So that was a really nice way to keep myself accountable. Ginger is asking, any tips for burnout? I'm in my senior year of my BFA, and oh my gosh, I'm feeling it.
I would alternate. I mean, when you're in your senior year, that's sort of crunch time where you have to really finish your work so that you can pass and graduate with your BFA. But I would try to alternate it with some other stimulating activity, such as going and exercising or going and hanging out with your friends, something like that. Another thing is do it together with your friends. I think that if you were in studio together and there's this community, you're doing it as a group, the feeling is shared, the burden gets lighter because a whole group is sharing it. Clara, what are your thoughts?
I think it's okay to feel burned out and to just say, yep, I'm burned out. I think sometimes when we try to like, oh, we got to fix it, you may not be able to fix it. I mean, at the end of a undergraduate program, it's 4 years of your life. I mean, I'm not even talking about the physical exhaustion, but just mentally. I mean, I remember when I was a senior in art school, I felt like my head was like stuffed with 8 different professors' voices. I didn't know who I was. I felt like I was just taking pieces from teachers and just throwing it together. It didn't really feel like it was me. And actually, as an instructor, that was the case for a very long time. I felt like when I was initially a teacher, I was like, oh man, I'm just ripping that from this teacher. And I mean, it was okay. But I didn't feel like I had my own identity as a teacher. That took a long time for me to do. And so now those teachers were extremely influential, but I do feel like I am my own teacher now. Just took a long time. I mean, Kat, you're still at the beginning of your teaching career. How has that been for you?
I mean, exactly the same thought process, but the way that you teach also is having good teaching demonstrated to you. You sort of inherit that knowledge so that you can pass it on as well. And that doesn't make it inauthentic. In fact, you can think of it maybe as a tradition, as you are inheriting something and passing it along, and you're part of this really wonderful process. So, of course, I feel, how do you say it, imposter syndrome, but I feel imposter syndrome for everything anyway.
No.
So I might as well just do it while feeling this way anyways.
Well, so one of the reasons I was interested in the burning technique is because I love Diane Victor, who is an incredible South African artist. I mean, she's up there with Kathy Kollowitz for me. I just love her work. And so she's done all these fumage paintings and they're incredible. And I was like, do I really want to let myself do this knowing that Diane Victor is out there? And then you go, whatever, who cares? Like that's basically the second you can just say, who cares, is when you free yourself up to do all these different things. And I love this comment from Blue. I once worked with a psychologist who trained elite athletes. She always said rest is an important part of work. Exactly. And you can be creative without making artwork, because sometimes I just want to read up on mezzotint. Like I have this mezzotint book and it talks about the history of mezzotint. So I'm not making any drawings, but I'm learning about something from history. Like where are places in your life, Kat, where you feel creative, but you're not making artwork physically?
I mean, anytime I travel, right? Also, whenever you travel, it's so go, 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 go. When do you even have the time to sit down with a sketchbook and draw something? The instant you sit down, that's going to be half an hour already, just
Right.
a minimum. And so if you were to do that, you have to budget that time into traveling. And sometimes it just doesn't work out that way. So you just go through it as well as you can, absorb all the experiences you can, and create something afterwards.
Well, also I noticed because when I am traveling, most of the reason I'm traveling is because I want to be filming things. And I realized in my earlier travels that I kept feeling like I had to film everything all the time. First of all, you realize you don't get very good content that way. You just get like all these scraps of whatever, and it's not very focused. So actually, when I travel now, I will decide in advance, I'm not going to film this thing. We're just going to go see it. Or, oh, we're going to go see this thing. I'm just going to take my DSLR and take reference photos. Oh, here's the thing. I am going to film 100%. And so I don't film as many things, but it just feels better to do it that way.
Actually, I experienced this while in Japan because I thought, oh my God, I'm in Japan. I need to be filming everything. And I did tire myself out after the first couple of weeks. And then I found myself relieved anytime I entered a museum that said, no cameras. I thought, well, what am I going to do? It's the rule. I can't break the rule. I guess I just got to take it as a rest day.
But it's also helpful even when I go to a museum, because I would go to a museum and be, I got to film everything. But now I realize that actually I need to be choosier. I need to pick pieces that will look good on camera, because we went to the printmaking show at MoMA. It was me and Diti, and there were these beautiful prints, but they were all black and white. They were small, and they were very subtle and beautiful. And in retrospect, I'm like, I shouldn't have filmed that because it was not going to look good on camera. But there is such a thing as stuff which is really not easy to film. Oh no, Typo says, I have the opposite problem. I have so many ideas, not enough time and motivation to do them. Any tips for that, Kat?
Well, I think what really drives me to take an idea to finish is that I really want to show someone. And so sometimes I think, well, how strongly do I want to show this to someone? And depending on how strongly I feel that way, I end up starting it and finishing it. But some of them I think, oh, well, that's just really nice. Maybe I could just throw that into my mental vault and bring it out another time. I don't really feel very driven to finish it at that point then. But if I think, oh, I would love to show this to my best friend, then that's when I start to materialize something. Do you have a solution for that too, Clara?
Oh my God, I'm like the poster child. Like I had this one day this week, I'm like drawing zombies. I'm like, Red Fairy book. And then I'm like, wait a second, I could do this too. Oh no, I think I want to illustrate Grimm's fairy tales and make an illustrated book. Like it's so like that happened within the span of like 2 hours. So bad. But I think to me, it's still worth having those ideas. A lot of them I'm never going to follow up on because I just don't have time to do all those things. But I also think I definitely have had projects, they just keep coming back. Like there's some ideas, I have them, they're gone. But the Bread Fairy thing keeps coming back, even though I haven't really done Bread Fairy paintings for a few years. I'm like, it's still there in my head. And I think you have to ask yourself, what are the things that are sticking? that really feel like I haven't stopped thinking about bread fairy paintings. Like I'm still thinking, oh, it'd be cool to do this, because actually most of my bread fairy drawings are colored pencil. I didn't really use acrylic. And now that I've sort of worked out my painting technique better, I think that would be really fun.
Actually, I have kind of a similar story. I call them the ideas that haunt me.
What?
The ones that, yeah,
dark.
they like, well, that's not that dark, is it? I mean, they're the ones that kind of like linger there and follow you. And sometimes they emerge and sometimes they are quiet, but they're still there. And sometimes I think with those ideas, it's all about the timing and the place as well. I kind of have faith that the idea will come into full force when I am ready for it. So I have ideas that are there, they come up from time to time, they haunt me, but I think that they will be produced when I am ready. It will be produced in the best that it can be when I'm ready for them.
And I've also done things where I will just work like crazy on something and then I won't touch it for a little bit because the time isn't right. Like when I went to Hawaii, I was like, oh, Clara's Art Adventures, my Netflix show. I mean, I was like all into it. And now I'm like, oh, wait, I have all this other stuff to do. I haven't posted anything for a long time. But the thing is, those little things, you just adding more things to that pile gets a little bit bigger every single time you think about it. And I've had projects I brought back from 5 years ago. And so I don't think there's any problem with that. So by the way, here's a comment from Lisa. I've noticed many people don't know how to work hard. They're very good at saying they work hard. This comes from observing many roommates. So Kat, what for you is the definition of working hard? Because everybody has a different means or idea of what that looks like.
Oh, I'm not sure. I don't think it's a very healthy point of view, but if I said I wanted to do something and it's done, then that's me working hard. But that, I don't know, I feel like that's so results reliant, and I'm not very happy with that definition. And at the same time, though, I never feel content with how much I've worked. I always feel like I could have worked harder, I could have worked more. But something that actually does help me a lot is taking myself out of the work environment and then reflecting on my work. So something I really enjoy doing is going on walks. And during the walks, I actually find I get a much broader, much larger point of view. And if I look back, I think, wow, I really did work hard. Or I'm like on my walk and I'm thinking, wow, I spent half an hour watching Walking Dead clips. or many hours. And on my walk, if I think, wow, yeah, I really was not disciplined today, then that usually drives me to then work hard. But I needed that outside perspective. I needed to break away from, say, Walking Dead clips or Instagram reels for me to realize that I was lacking in discipline or I had been working too hard.
Wait, what is your Walking Dead version, Kat?
I think I get really trapped. Oh my God, this is so bad. But I've been trying to make TikToks. And to make content on a platform, you have to consume that platform's content.
Yeah.
And so I have been sucked into the TikTok thing where I just scroll, and it's not good. It's not good.
I never really had problems with TikTok, but I do now because Hugh Jackman is all over TikTok. Because so every time I look, there's like 8 new Hugh Jackman videos, and I watch every single one. You know how some videos you just scroll through? I'm like, I don't care. He's just like sitting in the car laughing. I'm just going to watch this whole thing from beginning to end. So yes, it's kind of problematic. But going back to the working hard thing, I think for me it's focus, because I think working hard isn't necessarily about how long you work. Because when I think about when I was a student in art school, God, it took me so long to do things I could just whip together and make it 10 times better in about a half an hour. And so for me, I need to like be really focused. Like if I'm just sitting around like half paying attention, that's not really a good thing. So for me, it's the intensity of my commitment in that moment.
I really like that. I might take that.
Yeah, you work for 10 minutes, then I can watch Rick Grimes for half an hour. So Brittany's asking about the 3-1 critique rule. So that is a guideline that we have in our Discord. So the Discord has public critique channels, but we also have areas that you can pay a membership for, like the Patreon group. But we really wanted to make sure that people in the Discord, when they are posting for critique, that number one, they get significant, substantial comments, not, hey, that's cool, which is what most people would do if we didn't have that. And number two, that it really is a mutual exchange. Like, have you ever seen these Facebook groups where it's just like post and run? And people are just there to promote themselves. They're not actually engaging with each other. So what we say is that for every artwork you post for critique, you have to write 3 substantial critique comments for other people's posts in the critique channels. And let me tell you, it's not an easy thing to enforce, but I think it's extremely important. And one of the reasons why I'm very proud of the work that people do in the critique channels, because Kat, I feel like I learn more about myself when I'm doing a critique for somebody else. Like, it's actually a really great experience. It's not just, oh, I got to get this comment over. It's like, wow, looking at somebody's work analytically, it's very helpful.
Right. I mean, it's a mental exercise for yourself to be able to do that. And I've always said that in the classroom, if, say, there are 15 people in a class and you present your work, you don't learn from your own critique. You learn from the 14 other critiques that have gone on and participating in them as well. Thinking critically for different pieces is really a huge exercise and very enriching for yourself.
By the way, everybody, no Discord chat after Friday night hangouts, but you should join the Discord because that is our 24/7 global art party. I'm pretty much in there all business days. Thank you so much to our incredible top Patreon supporters who have been so loyal to us. And I am just blown away by your consistent support. We would not be here without you. Visit artprof.org. We have tons of content on there that's not on YouTube. Use the search bar. Art Prof has a podcast. It's available on Spotify and also on iTunes. And Gumpy would like for you to subscribe to our channel and join our global art community. Everybody, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.